In conjunction with KL Converge 2014, which was held recently, the Gadget Nation crew had an opportunity to interview two veterans in the creative content industry. Robert Lundberg, a veteran Hollywood producer responsible for high-grossing Hollywood films such as James Cameron's Avatar, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and 127 Hours, along with Kamil Othman, Vice President of Creative Industries Strategy and Policy, Multimedia Development Corporation, to talk about the creative content industry in Malaysia. Let's hear what they have to say.
I think it's a little bit of how there's some infrastructure support here in Malaysia, but then I would also say that if it's just good content, it's easy to be very supportive of it from the business side. I think if you're developing writers, you're developing ideas, which again the Malaysian infrastructure is able to do that. Things like MDEC are able to reach out and help writers, directors, even just producers put together a very, very interesting and original product because they get a little bit more freedom from the financial constraints that you would have otherwise. I think it's got to be the content and making sure it appeals to international audiences if it is indeed intended for international audiences. I think too many times there's also a business aspect to any type of filmmaking, be it animation or not, that has to be tackled in advance. And I think sometimes the creative is so much fun, it can be overwhelming, and it can overwhelm rather the business aspect. I think with respect to business, if you're able to put together a plan for distribution and make sure that you're able to find the marketing, both money and also just the correct plan to get the word out, you'll find an audience. But make sure you take into account the business aspect. It's very important.
Funding is not the only challenge in developing the creative content industry. What are the other challenges? Do we have good producers, writers, and animators?
Well, funding is not actually a problem, you may be surprised. Actually, it's what we call the universal quality of our scripts and our stories. Yeah, certainly, Malaysia has a lot of stories. But has anyone ever wondered, I mean, like I do, I'm sure you do too, why is it that despite all these stories, we are still unable to make something that we can sell properly in North America or in Thailand for that matter? You may hear that a lot of people may complain that funding is the problem. But right now, even if you were to give 100 million to a local production company, I mean to an average local production company, and you still won't get anything that's marketable outside Malaysia. That indicates that the issues to be resolved are something else. Now, I'm not sure what it is, but I can pin it down to when we produce a story, we are still domestic-centric. We are still thinking only Malaysians are watching it. We do not think, how do the people from Finland would watch it, or let alone, South America or even North America. It's like we are making movies for ourselves.
Becoming a hub for the creative content industry would be a huge boon. What does it take to become a renowned player in the global creative industry?
In terms of the Asia-Pacific region, this is where all the growth is happening, all the growth. And the fact that you're in an area that is very conducive to free market, but then also very open and supportive of filmmakers through a number of entities. And you got the technology in the studio in Iskandar. I mean, there's so many pros and pluses going for Malaysia. I'm a little jealous, to be honest. So I can't wait for 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road where you will see Malay filmmakers being considered on a regular basis for Hollywood films. You will see Malay actors, being considered for on a regular basis for Hollywood films. And the fact that there's such an international explosion of films, not just Hollywood films, but internationally, in Malay films and filmmakers in China, in France, in the UK, where all the growth is happening, even outside of Asia-Pac.
This is very interesting because one of the areas that we were looking at was more sophisticated ways of funding Malaysian content. And if I put it in another way, the Malaysian government has been very supportive for this industry and they have been providing funds for us. But previously it was like what we call the very traditional funding approach, which means basically it's one project at a time. So if someone has a project, you fund the project. So meaning when that particular person has finished the project, he either waits for the next round of funding because he can't get all his returns yet, because when you do something like a film, it will probably take about 5 years, 6 years before you can get everything back. So it's not like getting a loan for a business where within a year, 2 years you can get your returns. So we thought that the best way was to get in touch with the people who have been funding, first of all, big size films. Yes, I mean, Malaysia, we only talk about 3 million ringgit. And these gentlemen and these companies have been dealing with 100 million US dollar project. So surely somewhere in between we could see which are the best practices that we could actually adopt. And hence that's where I had the privilege of meeting a gentleman by the name of Greg Coote, who sadly has now left us. And he was behind a lot of interesting things when he was with Village Roadshow. And then he had a few financing, Dune Entertainment as well. He's one of the biggest financing and production arm in LA. So we thought, yes, let's see this new idea called Slate Funding, whereby it could assist studios who are not occupied 100% of the time, can maybe have 4 projects at a time. And then conditionally, we could provide conditions like facilities would be used. They could use local, resources and so on.
Dragon Slate is also currently reviewing writers for a theatrical screenplay based on the Malaysian legend Raja Bersiong, with development funding support from MDEC. How did the partnership between Dragon Slate Studio and MDEC come about, and what are their hopes for this project?
Actually, it was a company called Dragon Slate who came up with that idea because they applied for the development fund. Yes, it was called Royal Blood, but actually when we hear the story, we know it is about Raja Bersiong. And of course, because it is folklore, so nobody really owns that copyright or that real title. So just like if you want to make Masuri or Batu Belang Batu Tangkop, it's legend. The thing is that with that development that we are funding, we hope that they will do the same thing as what the writers of Maleficent did to the story of Sleeping Beauty. They catch you with a surprise at some turn, because you are so used to the story. Right now, I will tell you about Raja Bersiong. We all know what the story is all about. Right now, I have no idea what the creators behind this will be doing, but definitely I know that knowing these guys, I think they will come up with something that will be different.
MDEC was generous enough to support us on the development side. We're out to writers right now. We're essentially, the way the writing system is working for us, we're out to about 7 writers. We're looking at their samples to see which would be the best fit. And once we narrow that down, we're going to actually talk to 1 or 2 writers. The writer with the best pitch with respect to this project will use that development funding so that they can write a full script. From there we'll get a director, from there we'll get an actor, and from there we'll produce.
So I think the market have all been done well, and that's how this thing was greenlit. And we hope at least if you know the legend of Raja Bersiong, people will know it is from here. And sooner or later, if the locations are going to be here, we hope people will come to say, I must visit this perigi or this well where Raja Bersiong threw, I don't know, one of his wives or something down, So that's the tourist attraction. But the most important thing is copyright, IP, will belong to Malaysia.